thanks very much for the invitation to speak today. This is the process of medicines approval, the different process in Wales, is something I'm really passionate about, and I've actually over the last sort of 8 years in my role worked on different parts of the process, including the One Wales medicines process. So really pleased to be able to chat to people today and share our experience. Very quickly, just to set the scene, I want to give you a brief overview of Parkinson's, which will help explain why it's so important for us as an organisation to represent the views of people with Parkinson's in the One Wales process. Some of you may know Parkinson's is a progressive neurological condition. There is no cure at the moment, and it's actually, with ageing population, it's the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. There's currently about 7,700 people living with Parkinson's in Wales and about 145,000 across the UK. Okay, Parkinson's is a condition that develops when brain cells that are responsible for producing a chemical called dopamine die over time. Dopamine sends messages to help control movement and coordination. So when those cells are lost in the brain can't make enough dopamine, and the symptoms of Parkinson's will begin to appear. Most people that are familiar with Parkinson's will primarily be familiar with the shaking and the tremor, but there's a whole myriad of symptoms that are associated with Parkinson's, and that can actually make it quite difficult to diagnose in the early stages. Moving on to Parkinson's medication, and you'll see there I've highlighted in blue opicapone, which is the medicine that went through the One Wales process that I'm talking about. There are lots of medications for Parkinson's, but they kind of primarily act in 3 ways. There's sort of 3 groups. There's one group that will try to act as a dopamine substitute, so producing that a substitute of that chemical to support coordination and movement. There's another that will try to stimulate parts of the brain where dopamine would work. And there's a third kind, which is a COMT inhibitor, of which opicapone is one of 2 main ones. And that kind of drug will try and block the enzymes that would break down dopamine. So it gives the body more chance to have more dopamine to send those correct messages around the body. As I just mentioned, opicapone is a COMT inhibitor, and it blocks the enzymes that break down the other drugs that we use to replace the dopamine. Prior to the One Wales process, it was only, I believe, used on a trial basis in Wales. So there was only really a handful of people, I think 20-something people in Wales, using it under very close monitoring with their Parkinson's specialists. So when it came up to be considered for the One Wales process, we felt it was really important that as a patient organisation we put forward as best as we could the views of people that were using the medication already, because it is really important that people living with a condition like Parkinson's can have access to, you know, the biggest range of approved treatments that there is out there. Okay, what did we do? What was the process itself like? So before we got as far as going along to a meeting, we had to gather our evidence so that we could share information at the meeting. So we put out a social media call via our newsletter to volunteers, asking people that were perhaps using opicapone on a trial basis to get in touch with us if they were willing to tell us about what that experience was like for them. We put a call out on our portal called Basecamp, which is where we reach out to clinical colleagues across Wales, asking them the same question, if there was any way that they could, you know, put us in touch with people using opicapone. One of the key things that we did at this point was we reached out to clinicians that we have a working relationship with. So there are a number of Parkinson's consultants and nurses across Wales that we work with on other things. And we reached out to them to explain what we wanted to do, that we wanted to participate in this process. But in order to be able to do that, we needed to reach patients using opicapone. And very carefully, and with, you know, confidentiality being at the centre of everything, what happened then is clinicians that saw the merit of a patient organisation contributing were willing to reach out to their patients that they knew were on opicapone, that may be willing to talk to us, and where they consented, they were then able to share contact details for us to speak to them directly. And that was really, really important. Without that basis, it would have been a lot harder to reach out to individuals using the drug. Okay. Okay, so when we had a number of people that were willing to talk to us, this was pre-COVID. So what I did was I spent quite a nice period of time going around visiting people that were using opicapone in their own homes primarily. And the reason I did that was because you're talking to people about, you know, a condition that they live with that's not always easy to talk about. You're talking about symptoms, you're talking about side effects, and you want people to be as comfortable as possible while you're doing that. So I very much took the approach of, let's have a chat over a cup of tea, and I would take notes, and sort of, it would be a very informal, you know, the conversation would lead us wherever things came up. So that seemed to work really well. It was hugely important as well that where appropriate, I got to speak with carers and family members, because obviously when somebody's medication does or doesn't work, or their condition is progressing, there's an impact not just on the individual that's got that condition, but those that live with them and care for them. Something else that I found really quite heartwarming along the way was, although I was talking to people that had perhaps had quite difficult times, and that's how they'd come to be prescribed this medication on a trial basis, there was a clear sense that people felt that by sharing their experiences with me so that I could put them forward on their behalf, that they were contributing to the greater good, and that was really, really important. So at the end of that, I wrote up all of the case studies that of everybody that I'd spoken to, really importantly anonymised these as well, and made sure that the people I'd spoken to were happy with what I'd written and that it was an accurate reflection of what they'd told me. And I felt, although, you know, it was small numbers at that point because the drug was obviously not widely used, I felt we had a really robust evidence base that we could take to the One Wales group to share people's views on the medication. Initially, we submitted a supporting statement asking for opicapone to be approved using some of the evidence we'd gathered, and we were then invited to attend the One Wales meeting so that members could get a better understanding of the patient and carer perspective. So as part of that, I was asked to give an overview of the patient experience. I was able to answer direct questions and discuss the impact on quality of life for people. And I think, you know, looking at what we've heard today so far, that was the really refreshing part for me. I sat there and listened to, you know, clinical evidence and economic evidence, and I won't mind admitting some of that was over my head, but then I was able to bring sort of the real life picture to things as well. And I would say that was really, really well received. Although it's a formal meeting, everybody was very welcoming. You know, my views, I felt, were given equal weighting to, you know, the numbers of the number crunching and things like that. So that was really a really positive experience. And off the back of that meeting, then a couple of months later, we received the confirmation that opicapone had been approved for the One Wales process. I will point out before England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, which was great. And I had feedback that, you know, being able to put the voices of people with Parkinson's across in such a direct manner made a real difference to that decision at that point. So yeah, a positive experience from my point of view. Appreciate that obviously because I work for quite a large organisation, I was able to go about it in the way that I did, but I would certainly have confidence that the process takes on the views of both big organisations but also individual submissions absolutely at the same time.